Have you ever made a decision, maybe, or felt a certain way about something, and it just felt intuitive? But then when you stop to think about it, it didn't really add up.
Yeah, like your gut feeling pointed one way, but looking back, the action itself seemed a bit, well, maybe not entirely rational.
Exactly. That feeling, that little nudge, it's often the result of what some researchers call hidden games.
Right, and we're not talking about like strategic thinking in chess or business deals here.
No, not conscious strategy. We're diving into how game theory can actually explain these unseen forces that shape our everyday behavior. Moshe Hoffman and Arazioli explore this brilliantly in their book, Hidden Games.
So what does a game mean in this context? It's useful to think about it simply. Traditional game theory has players, strategies, payoffs.
But in these hidden games, the players might be, say, different parts of our own brain, or maybe the social groups we belong to.
And the strategies. Those are the mental shortcuts, the unconscious biases we all develop. The payoffs could be anything. Really fitting in socially, making quick decisions, even just protecting our self-esteem, all happening sort of under the radar.
So today, we're going to dig into your sources, covering everything from game theory basics and motivation history to altruism, behavior analysis, even nature versus nurture.
Our goal is really to unpack one of the most pervasive hidden games out there, unconscious bias.
Yep. By the end of this deep dive, you should have a much clearer picture of what it is, how it works psychologically, where it pops up in daily life and society.
Its impacts, which can be pretty far-reaching, and importantly, some actual strategies for, navigating and maybe even overcoming it.
Because this isn't just about understanding it intellectually, it's about getting some leverage, maybe, to actually affect behavior. Hopefully for the better.
It's definitely true. We all like to think our choices are, rational, carefully thought out.
We pride ourselves on that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But what if a huge chunk of what we do, think, and feel is driven by stuff we're not even aware of? That's really the core of unconscious bias or implicit bias.
Okay, so how do the sources define it?
Well, they frame it as a systematic error experienced in decision-making, where people are often totally oblivious of their bias.
Oblivious, wow.
Yeah. I mean, think about it. Our brains get bombarded with information constantly, so naturally they look for shortcuts, mental shortcuts.
Makes sense. It's efficient.
Exactly. Super efficient for processing the world quickly. But that efficiency can accidentally create these really powerful hidden biases.
And that's the kicker, isn't it? These biases, they aren't usually intentional. You're not trying to be biased.
Not at all. And they're not always easy to control in the moment either.
Yeah. So if they're not intentional, how do we even start to grapple with something that has such a big impact on our understanding, our actions, our decisions?
It's a huge challenge. It's not about needing to be some kind of game theory genius, but more about recognizing that our own preferences, our beliefs, even our gut feelings are playing out this hidden game all the time. In the background.
Okay, so how does that work in the brain? Is there a model for this?
Yeah, Daniel Kahneman's System 1 and System 2 model is really helpful here.
Thinking fast and slow.
Exactly. System 1 is the fast, automatic, intuitive, involuntary thinking. That's where implicit bias really lives.
Like recognizing a face or understanding a simple sentence.
Yeah.
Stuff that just happens.
Precisely. No conscious effort needed. System 2 is the opposite. Slow, effortful, conscious, intentional. That's your complex math problems, your logical reasoning.
The thinking we think we're doing all the time.
Right. We tend to identify with System 2, believing our decisions come from careful thought. But System 1 is always running, shaping those initial reactions.
And this leads to dual attitudes.
Yes, the dual attitudes model. It suggests a person can hold two conflicting attitudes about the same thing simultaneously, an implicit unconscious one and an explicit conscious one.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Racial prejudice is a classic, if uncomfortable, example. Early life experiences, maybe your upbringing or just cultural exposure, can shape these deep, implicit negative views.
Even if you don't consciously agree with them.
Exactly. Later on, education, meeting diverse people, that can build explicit beliefs that are non-prejudicial. So you end up with this internal conflict, this duality. Your conscious values might say one thing, but your unconscious associations whisper another.
Wow. That takes real introspection to even notice, I imagine.
Definitely. It's like having two different players running strategies inside your own head.
So it sounds like a lot of these hidden games are deeply rooted in us being social creatures, our interactions, how we learn, maybe even things we think are purely personal, like taste.
Oh, absolutely. Our social nature is fundamental here. And that brings us to Henri Tajfel's social identity theory. It's incredibly insightful for understanding
What's
bias.
the core idea there?
It basically says that our membership in groups, the in-groups we belong to versus the out-groups, we don't profoundly shapes our attitudes and how we see the world.
Okay.
Tajfel identified three cognitive processes, sort of like strategies in this social game. First is social categorization. We naturally lump people, including ourselves, into social categories.
Like us and them.
Pretty much. And sometimes we see people more as members of a group than as unique individuals. Second is social comparison. We instinctively figure out the value or social standing of different groups.
Like comparing professions or neighborhoods.
Exactly. Thinking, say, teachers have higher social standing than garbage collectors. It's this implicit ranking system.
Okay, categorization, comparison. What's the third?
Social identification. This is how our own sense of self gets tied up with our group memberships and how that influences our feelings towards both our group and others.
So we tend to favor our own group.
Yes, the theory shows we're inclined to seek out the positive things about our in-group members and often focus on the negative traits of out-group members.
Which can lead to problems, obviously.
Big problems. Identity threats, intergroup conflict. It's a brain strategy that probably helped group cohesion way back when, but the cost today is often bias against those outside our group.
You mentioned taste earlier. How does that fit in? Can something like aesthetics be part of these hidden social games?
Definitely. Think about that example from one of the sources, the tradition of growing long fingernails in parts of Northeast India.
Right, you mentioned that.
To an outsider, it might just look like a style choice. But in that specific culture, long nails are seen as beautiful precisely because they act as a signal, a costly signal, in game theory terms.
What do they signal?
They signal that you don't do manual labor, specifically field work. It distinguishes people with office jobs from the agricultural majority. It's like a peacock's tail, a status marker.
So people aren't consciously thinking, my nails show my job status.
Probably not. They just genuinely find it aesthetically pleasing within that context. It shows how our ideas of beauty aren't always objective. They're often tied into these hidden games of signaling our identity and status within our social groups. Wine snobbery, appreciating certain kinds of art, they often signal background, education, social networks, not just pure objective quality.
That's fascinating. It makes you wonder what other preferences are actually social signals.
It really does. Like that Paul Bloom study on art originals versus replicas, people value the original way more, suggesting aesthetics are heavily influenced by the story, the signal, unlike, say, judging a car purely on performance.
Okay, so these hidden games, these unconscious biases, aren't just one thing. They show up in loads of different ways. Let's maybe walk through some specific examples from the sources and see how they fit this pattern.
Sounds good. A lot of them revolve around identity, as we've discussed. Take gender bias or sexism.
Preferring one gender or just falling back on stereotypes, right?
Yeah.
Like men are assertive, women are caring, those kinds of things.
Exactly. And the stats are pretty sobering. One source mentions studies finding like 90% of participants showed bias against women. And half of men apparently believed they had more right to a job than women.
90%. That's huge. And often implicit, even if people consciously support equality.
Precisely. It's the brain's efficient but often unfair categorization strategy kicking in. Then you've got ageism.
Discriminating based on age, old or young.
Yep. We hear a lot about bias against older workers, people over 40, hence the specific laws protecting them. But it hits young people, too.
How so?
Well, being denied rights like voting or buying certain things based only on age, or just having their ideas dismissed as naive because they're young, it's another quick categorization shortcut that avoids looking at the individual.
Okay, what about looks?
Appearance bias, or lookism. Judging based on physical appearance. This breaks down further. There's beauty bias.
Where attractive people get treated better.
Yeah, like hiring managers unconsciously favoring good-looking candidates, maybe even over more qualified ones. Then there's weight bias.
The assumption that plus-size people might be lazy or undisciplined.
Exactly that stereotype. And even height bias, taller people being perceived as more leader-like or authoritative.
These are all visual shortcuts, aren't they? Assigning traits based on looks without real evidence.
Totally. And closely related is the halo effect. Edward Thorndike coined that term.
How does that work?
It's when a positive impression from one quality, say someone is attractive, makes you unconsciously assume they have other positive qualities too, like being smart or kind.
So one positive trait creates a halo that makes everything else look good.
You got it. It's a super efficient mental strategy to form a quick overall impression based on limited data. But it can really blind you to negatives or lead you way off track. Your brain just goes, good here, probably good everywhere, streamlines judgment, but risks error.
What else? I feel like we gravitate towards people like us sometimes.
That's affinity bias or similarity bias. It's that tendency to favor people who share our interests, background experiences.
Feels natural, comfortable.
It does. That's the social payoff. But the downside is that it can unintentionally shut out people who are different, which really undermines objectivity, especially in things like hiring or team building.
Right. And related to that maybe is sticking to what we already believe.
Ah, yes. Conformity bias, often called confirmation bias. That's a really interesting one. Your brain actively prefers processing information that confirms what you already think.
Why does it do that?
Well, it's efficient, again, and it protects your self-esteem. It feels good to be right. You see it when people easily remember all the reasons supporting their view on a controversial topic, but kind of forget or dismiss the arguments against it.
A game of mental self-reinforcement.
Perfectly put. We also see name bias. Unconscious judgments based purely on someone's name.
Tied to assumptions about their race, gender, religion, ethnicity.
Exactly. The studies are quite stark here. One found white job applicants got a 24% positive response rate compared to just 15% for minority ethnic applicants. Another showed small businesses being hesitant to even interview candidates with foreign-sounding names.
That shows how deep these cultural associations run, becoming part of our automatic strategies.
Definitely. And finally, there's nonverbal bias. This is about subtle body language cues.
How we act toward certain groups, even if we don't say anything biased.
Right. One study was fascinating. Participants describing white suspects tended to use more open, uncertain body language, but when describing black suspects, they adopted a more closed, crossed posture.
Wow. Subtle but revealing.
Extremely. It shows how prejudice can leak out in these tiny ways, these subtle moves and the hidden games we play, influencing perceptions without a word being spoken.
So, okay, we see all these different biases, these hidden games playing out. What does it actually mean when this happens at scale? What are the real-world consequences in our daily lives and society?
Well, it becomes pretty clear they have a really significant and often negative effects across loads of different areas.
Like in schools.
Huge impacts there. Racial bias, for instance, leads to really stark disparities. You see Black students facing suspension rates nearly 4 times higher than others.
4 times.
Yeah. And things like overly critical grading, which can feed into higher dropout rates, shape teacher expectations in damaging ways.
And terms like achievement gap sometimes mask these underlying biases, right? Focusing on the symptom, not the cause.
Exactly. It normalizes the outcome without questioning the hidden games driving it. Then look at healthcare.
How does bias play out there?
Underrepresented groups often face unconscious bias that affects everything: admissions to medical school, hiring of staff, and crucially, the actual patient care they receive.
Do patients show bias too?
Sometimes, yeah. Patients might implicitly prefer caregivers of their own race or gender, and assumptions based on bias can lead to major health disparities. Think about early assumptions regarding HIV transmission or assumptions made about LGBTQ patients in clinical settings. It can lead to misdiagnoses or inadequate care.
Okay, what about the legal system?
Bias is a major issue there, too. Gender bias affects women in law, fewer partners, more office housework tasks. Ageism can sideline younger professionals.
And in the courtroom itself?
Critically, yes. Implicit bias can sway jury selection, influence prosecutors deciding on plea bargains or charges, even affect judges' rulings. This chips away at objectivity and ultimately public trust in the whole system. It's a high-stakes, hidden game.
And the workplace. We touched on hiring.
Right. Bias in hiring means you might not get the best person for the job, which hits productivity, but it also fuels things like bullying based on appearance, harassment.
And it can damage the company's reputation.
Absolutely. Plus, it creates alienation. Sources mention figures like 1/3 of employees feeling alienated and a similar number holding back ideas because they don't feel included.
And that alienation has knock-on effects.
For sure. Linked to stress, accidents, people calling in sick more often. These hidden games are really costly for organizations.
Finally, politics. How does bias influence things there?
It's a powerful, often invisible force. Think about voters who call themselves undecided. Research suggests many have strong implicit preferences guiding them. They often end up rationalizing a gut feeling rather than objectively weighing information.
And on specific issues?
Definitely. Public views on things like Immigration, where you see negative implicit attitudes towards certain groups like Latinos, or even gun ownership, where weapons might be unconsciously associated more with people of color. These views get shaped by media portrayals and underlying biases. Even trained police officers aren't immune. It deeply influences our collective choices.
Okay, so given all this pervasive impact,
Yeah.
the big question is, can we actually use this understanding? Can knowing about these hidden games help us change things in the real world, make things happen that we want?
I think so, yes. Absolutely. The really positive takeaway is that understanding these biases equips us with a toolkit for change, both on a personal level and within institutions.
So personally, what can someone do?
Well, the first step, maybe the hardest, is just acknowledging you have biases. We all do. Taking something like the implicit association test, the IAT, can be really eye-opening, can show you your own hidden preferences.
Okay, awareness first. Then what?
Then, introspection. Really trying to examine how biases might be influencing your own decisions, your relationships, and consciously try to expand your experiences.
How?
By interacting with people from different backgrounds, it helps challenge those automatic group associations. Also, try to avoid snap decisions. Slow down, consider the facts.
Push back against the gut reaction sometimes.
Exactly. Challenge those reflexive judgments. Consciously replace them with more objective thoughts. And just keep learning, read, engage in discussions with diverse people. It helps rewire those underlying strategies over time.
Makes sense. And what about in organizations like the workplace?
Awareness is key there, too. Managers and employees need to know about common biases. Training is vital, especially for HR folks involved in hiring.
Modernizing hiring seems crucial.
Totally. Use inclusive language in job ads. Maybe anonymize applications, initially remove names, genders, use standardized interviews, and maybe simple skills tasks so everyone's compared fairly.
Rely on data more than gut feelings.
Yes, base decisions on reliable data, not just intuition about who seems like a good fit, and foster a culture where people feel safe to speak up, maybe offer anonymous feedback channels. Setting clear diversity goals also helps counteract unconscious drift.
What about schools? How can educators tackle this?
Teachers really need to cultivate awareness of their own biases. That's step one for better interactions. Increasing empathy is huge. Learning about students' lives, maybe empathy training.
Mindfulness could help?
Research suggests it can. Practices like loving-kindness meditation have actually been shown to reduce implicit bias. Hiring diverse teachers helps too. And just encouraging real intercultural communication, asking questions, embracing different viewpoints, fostering dialogue.
And in healthcare.
Similar themes. Professionals need education on health disparities and their own potential prejudices. Encouraging positive, frequent contact with marginalized groups can break down barriers.
And focusing on the patient.
A truly patient-centered approach. Ask more questions, don't just rely on intuition. Be mindful of the specific needs diverse groups might have. And hospitals need to look at their policies to make sure they align with eliminating bias, ensuring fair care for everyone.
Okay, lastly, the political and legal sectors. What can be done there?
Educating the public about how bias affects their decisions is important, making them less susceptible to politicians who might exploit those biases.
Be getting more diverse people involved.
Yes, encouraging people from all sorts of backgrounds to run for office, participate in campaigns. Some places use policies to ensure diverse candidate pools, like requiring women to make up a certain percentage of candidates.
And for lawyers and judges?
Legal training needs to include unconscious bias. Lawyers should focus on individuating clients, seeing them as individuals, not stereotypes. And accountability across the board is essential.
Is there a good case study showing this kind of approach working? Using game theory insights for good.
Yeah, the Can You TB study mentioned in one source is a fantastic example.
Remind us of the problem there.
Sure. Tuberculosis treatment takes a long time. The drugs have side effects. There's stigma. So patients often stop taking their meds once they feel a bit better, which is a public health disaster because it breeds drug resistance.
A classic individual cost-benefit versus community cost problem.
Exactly. So instead of just, say, paying people to take meds, they applied game theory insights into motivation.
What did they do?
They used a simple cell phone platform. It sent reminders, but crucially, it required verification, and it followed up if verification failed.
So it wasn't just a reminder.
No. It did two key things from a game theory perspective. It dramatically increased observability. Someone, the follow-up group, knew if you took your meds or not. And it eliminated plausible excuses. You couldn't just say, oh, I forgot, or my dog ate my phone, because verification was needed.
Ah, so it leveraged reputation and accountability.
Precisely. It nudged people towards adherence, not just for their health, but likely also to maintain their reputation and avoid the hassle of follow-up. It used psychological levers.
And that really highlights the core idea, doesn't it? Understanding the hidden game, in this case, the game of motivation, reputation, avoiding hassle, gives us real leverage to affect behavior.
Exactly. Potentially for good. It's not about being manipulative, but about understanding those deeper drivers, the payoffs our brains seek, the strategies we use unconsciously.
Listening to all this, it really strikes me how central reputation is for us, how deeply social we are.
It really is fundamental.
And the fact that getting a handle on these hidden games doesn't just explain why we do things, but actually gives us tools to maybe build more positive, more equitable interactions. That feels genuinely powerful.
It does offer a path forward, I think.
So here's something to maybe mull over. As you go about your day tomorrow, think about how understanding these hidden biases might shift just one interaction you have or maybe one decision you make. How can you become a more conscious player in the unavoidable hidden games of everyday life?